party, the Girondists, and he gets thrown out of office. And pretty soon, believe it or not, Thomas Paine gets thrown in jail in France too for treason. Well, eventually he comes back to this country. And then he published another pamphlet called The Age of Reason, which had been called ever after, quote, the Atheist Bible. It was an attack on organized religion, which had roused great indignation in America. But then, here's how he really becomes the American pariah. Thomas Paine wrote a long letter when he's back in the States, which he published, accusing George Washington as being secretly a traitor who had fully intended to sell out the American cause until Benedict Arnold beat him to the punch. Well, do you think that went over like a lead balloon? Yeah. Then he also wrote a letter saying, he wrote this in a newspaper, accusing Washington of trying to make himself a king. He concluded the letter by saying that sooner George Washington dies, the better. Of course, political suicide. To criticize the greatest man of the century, who was currently president of the United States. Well, he received total ostracism in the United States. He was drinking very badly by this time. He eventually wound up, I guess corset making was out of the question, and eventually wound up begging on the streets and drinking all day. Well, the second one of the founding fathers who committed political self-immolation was Aaron Burr. Burr shot and killed his erstwhile friend and now political enemy, another one of the founders, Alexander Hamilton. He did this at the time when Burr himself, he did the shooting when he was vice president in the United States, which seems in Congress. He then tried to set up a rival republic to the United States out in the West, a new empire which would parallel the United States and which would be centered in the Ohio Valley, in Blennerhassett Island. He wanted to make a deal with the French, and then with the Spanish, we would have a Western parallel to the United States. His empire was to go all the way down to Florida. Well, he was arrested, tried for treason. He escaped. He was found not guilty, but eventually then he went to Mexico, where he tried to foment a revolution. They kicked him out. He went to France, where he tried to talk Napoleon into starting a revolution in Mexico, and they kicked him out. Finally, Aaron Burr comes back to this country, very, very unpopular, tries to start he ingratiated himself with the political party, the Democratic Party of New York, Tammany, and he started a little law practice, but eventually he died in great poverty and abject sadness. I think to have out of a dozen people, 2 defectors is surprising, but I think the lesson we can derive from this is simply this. The lesson is the humanness of the people we elect. Our political leaders, admirable as they may be, are human, and they make dreadful mistakes, even from the gallery of Revolutionary War heroes to the present time. Political leaders can make grievous mistakes. Burr did, obviously. Thomas Paine did, obviously. It's probably always going to go on, some in the past, some in the present, some in the future. I'm sure in our political mechanism it will always be so. It is probably something to brood over.